Ah, the Spice Girls, who can forget them, right? More than 55 million records sold. And you know what? They put this woman, Melanie C, a.k.a. Sporty Spice, on the map faster than you could say zig-zag.
Really wanna zig-a-zig.
But you know all that, right? This part, you might not. Now, growing up just outside Liverpool, Melanie started taking dance, but her mom was in a rock and roll band, and Melanie wanted to sing. So one day she answered an ad in the paper looking for members for an all-new British girl band. And word has it that a bad bout of tonsillitis almost took her out of the running. But she made it and became part of a phenomenon.
Girl power!
Success wasn't all great though. Melanie battled depression, battled an eating disorder. Probably didn't help that she was actually called the plain one of the bunch. But Mel also got the kudos as perhaps the only one of the Spice Girls who had any real pipes. Which came in handy when the girls split up. Mel changed her style and her name to Melanie C, and in 1999 she released her first solo album called Northern Star. Melanie had a couple of #1 singles in the UK, but her next record wasn't as successful, and in 2003, she was dropped by her record label. So she set up her own. It's called Red Girl Records, and in 2005, Melanie released Beautiful Intentions. Last year, Melanie took some time out for the hugely hyped Spice Girls reunion tour, but now that that's done, she's back in to make her own music. Her new record's called This Time, and it was just released in Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Melanie C.
Yeah, good to see you.
How are you?
I'm really well, actually.
The last time, you were here on a tour, you're playing these massive arenas, these huge shows with the Spice Girls. Now you're going back and you're playing clubs.
Yeah.
You know, you actually go on stage and you can see the whites of the eyes of everybody in the audience.
I love it. You know, the biggest difference for me is, you know, I can't take anything away from the Spice Girls. It is incredible. What an experience. What a thing to be a part of. You know, I'm so proud. And it's amazing, but it's hard to get your head around it. You know, so it's almost like this fairy tale existence. And when I'm touring as a solo artist, I'm playing clubs and theatres, and like you say, you see the whites of their eyes, and it feels real, you know? So you can really get a lot out of it because you have a real sense of being there rather than it being this out-of-body experience, you know?
Do you, you know, Ozzy Osbourne once said that the scariest thing he ever had to do in his life, and you can imagine he's done a bunch, was the first time he went on the stage solo, not with the back of Black Sabbath. And he walked out on stage and it was just him. Can you relate to that?
Wow, absolutely. The first gig I did, I was at a place called the Lead Mill in Sheffield, which is quite a famous little venue. And I didn't speak. It was just song, 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 song. And the gig was over. It just felt like in 20 minutes. It was just insane.
Is that because you were nervous?
I was so nervous. And it actually took me, I think of all the things I've had to really learn and, you know, I mean, we're learning constantly. But the biggest thing for me to get over was the speaking thing on stage, and to try and find your own persona and who you are, you know, as a solo artist, not musically, because when you're writing and expressing yourself, that's the easy part. It's like being on, who's this person that I become when I'm on stage? So it took me a while to get comfortable in that realm.
Well, you had to do it in front of people, because you kind of went straight to solo work.
Yeah, I did.
Ozzy Osbourne once ripped a dove apart. Can you relate to that?
Not so much.
Not so much?
Yeah.
Did you have a moment on stage in this last big reunion tour with the Spice Girls where you thought, I want to get out and do this on my own again, I want to go solo, I'm not this girl anymore?
Every day. But, you know, I have no regrets. The Spice Girls reuniting was the phone call I never wanted. You know, I didn't want to do it. It was constantly rumoured in the press. It was never ever true. But then, you know,
Well, you held out the longest, didn't you?
I did.
Why did you give in?
You know, well, it
Aside
seemed...
from money, because the money must have been money.
You know, no one... I know nobody will ever believe me, but the money wasn't a deciding factor at all. And the money is not anything like what has been reported.
Really?
You know, that's crazy figures.
It was $20 million a pop is what we heard.
yeah, right. You know, anybody who has any understanding of like touring and the costs and how many people are involved, you'd know that just isn't realistic. Not in 4 months, well, 3 months on the road, you know. So yeah, of course, you know, we made a nice little bit of money, but it's nothing like what they say. But aside from that, you know, for me, it was a bigger decision because when I originally left the Spice Girls, I had a lot going on personally, you know. I just started my solo career. I'd had my great hit with Bryan Adams. Yay!
Who has sat in that very chair.
Has he?
He has.
Oh, we love Bryan. So I'd had my little outing. I'd had a taste of freedom. And I'd been in the studio. I'd recorded Northern Star, my first album. And I'd worked with all these people like Rick Rubin and Marius DeVries and incredible songwriters and producers. And everyone was giving me this confidence, you know, to move on and do something on my own. And, you know, and I was just ready to go. And, you know, my last days with the Spice Girls weren't that happy, you know. With a huge band like that, we were touring and promoting and travelling constantly, and we were all exhausted. And
But you could lose yourself in that, can't you?
oh, well, I did. I totally did. You know, my time with the Spice Girls, you know, I wasn't eating properly, I was underweight, and then when my body just couldn't cope anymore, I had depression, you know, and I had all these things I was harbouring, and it just came to the point where I needed to be free of that to really, you know, to get myself well again.
Your mother's still in a band?
She is.
I would imagine you would actually be able to talk a lot to your mom about what you go through in this job.
Yeah, we do. You know, it's funny, she's been in a band since she was 14. So she's what I would call a real muso. You know, I'm from Liverpool and she's from Liverpool. And she's known, you know, there on the club scene since the 60s, or the late 60s, early 70s.
So you're known as her daughter rather than she is your mother.
Yeah. Nah, I've surpassed that now. No, but you know, I'm so proud of her. And it was really watching her as a child that gave me the bug. I just thought, you know, I want to do that too.
But when you're going through those tough times, did you go to your mother and say, what do I do here?
Well, you know what? When I go through those tough times, I went to my mother as a mother. You know, I think that's when you need your mum the most, isn't it?
Okay, when you walked into this to make this solo record now, and this is on your own label, partly because you blush and partly because your favorite football team wears red, is that it?
Oh, don't you love bags?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a very different sounding record. I mean, this is a very adult record. This is even the pictures inside.
Yeah.
You know, you wearing the gown and all that. Conscious decision that this is what I'm going to do?
Well, you know, I think what's probably quite weird for people here in Canada is because they haven't seen me since the first album, they've kind of missed the in-between. Because, you know, I had the second album, which you mentioned, me getting dropped by my label, thanks.
I didn't know it.
So, yeah, you know, there was all that bit too. So my first and second albums were really time for experimenting with different musical styles. You know I'm a pop artist, and I'll always be a pop artist, but I love music. So a song like Never Be the Same Again had an R&B feel. I Turn to You was more of a dance track. So it's just been fun to really, you know, play around. I did that with Reason. And then when I left my record company. I call it when I was released.
When you were released?
When I was released.
Were you surprised?
No, I totally knew it was coming. And I was relieved because I was with Virgin Records, who were going through some problems at the time, and EMI took them over. Now, EMI are struggling, as most majors are. You know, the industry's going through a tough time right now. And so we could see it coming, and my A&R man had gone, the MD of the company had gone. So all the people I'd had these relationships with and who knew me for like 7 years totally understood me, who I am as an artist, as a person, what I wanted to achieve.
And who you didn't want to be anymore.
Yeah, totally. And then, you know, somebody new comes in and starts throwing all these comparisons at you of who they want to market you like. And it's
what
like,
was the
well,
weirdest
that's not...
one?
Well, it's not really weird because it's someone I'm a fan of, but it's just, we're all different, you know. It's like, it was like Pink. It was like, you know, you can be the British Pink. It's like,
well, she was athletic,
I'm not,
you were sporty,
I'm
right?
the English Melanie C.
I'm the English Melanie C from Liverpool.
Yeah.
Well, from just
so, you know, no disrespect to any of the people who I worked with at that time, but it had changed. And I didn't have any faith in the company anymore. And that was proved with the disappointing sales of Reason. So when I went and started my own independent label, I just thought, I want to do something completely different. It was my manager that actually said, hey, this could be really cool. And I've never looked back. just have been so inspired by it creatively, and it's so much fun.
It's also new territory. Are you a fearless person about this sort of thing, or is there some trepidation when you enter those?
You know what? Financially, it's scary because it costs a lot of money to make records, and these days, music's pretty worthless, you know? And everyone says, oh,
well, the CD is worthless. Like, you're not selling them the same way, right?
Yeah, the CD's pretty worthless. So there's been a big change. But you know what? We have to embrace this change. And I think that's the problem that the major labels have had, is that, I am probably bad for saying this, but I think they're arrogant. And they didn't embrace the digital age. And it's come and bit them on the arse.
At this stage, but the thing about, you know, major labels is, for a lot of artists, including yourself, it worked for so long.
Yeah.
Like, and there was a lot of success.
Well, there was greed as well, because music became too expensive. You know, I was embarrassed sometimes when, you know, they retail the CD. I remember my, like, Reason, when it came out, it was like, how much was it? Like, in the UK, it was like £17. So that's what, you know, that's like nearly $40. It's like... You know, it's crazy. It's no wonder, you know, students, you know, young people that haven't got much money, or they have a love of music, they're going and downloading files and sharing files and stuff.
When your audience shows up, I mean, they come to see you playing in a club of 1,100 people. That's a really personal experience. Do you take something away from these performances now that make you a better musician that perhaps you couldn't learn when you're on stage in front of 30,000 people?
Definitely. It's completely different. But every venue you play, you are constantly learning, you know, new things, because, you know, I'll play a small venue, which are my favourites, but then also I'll play like big festivals, and sometimes you're performing to like 250,000 people. I think that was my biggest. You know, it's insane. In the
and you're
middle
paired
of
up with different bands.
Yeah.
You could be on the same bill as Metallica.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And you've got no sound check, and it's, well, I don't think I'd ever be on the same bill as Metallica.
You play Glastonbury, you might, Melanie. You absolutely might.
I actually have been on the same bill as the Rolling Stones.
Come on, that's pretty cool.
That's really cool, yeah.
They're the other band that's not from Liverpool. Good to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Melanie Chesney, everybody. Melanie C. All right, the album is called This Time. There it is right there. She's in the midst of her Canadian tour. Tomorrow, Toronto, then London, Ontario, and then Winnipeg, Saskatoon, Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, British Columbia. We'll be right back.
Hey, have you ever eaten squab?